No, listen, when I need tech support, clearly the most obvious and bestest way to get it is to send mass texts to my 10 best friends ad nauseum until one of them, perhaps out of sheer exasperation, chooses to respond and say, Cody, download the drivers. You don't need to buy hardware.
I think it would have been far funnier had you gone out and bought some sort of expensive thing to try and fix your USB 3 ports when you didn't have the drivers installed in your computer.
I don't buy expensive computer things. I order them from Amazon when they are cheap, and cheap is the name of the game here at Game Life Balance US, the free podcast you're about to listen to, in which I, Cody Gough, talk to Jonathan Martin about Super Metroid.
Why did you say it like that?
I don't know.
It was creepy. It was really kind of gross.
It's a good question.
We've been going through the library of SNES Classic games over the past couple of episodes, taking user requests basically in terms of they nominate a game, we pick a game, and one of the games nominated last time was Super Metroid, and so we rolled the dice and we got it for this episode, and we were both very excited. Very excited because we both had very fond memories of this game.
Yeah, absolutely. We are both young millennial whippersnappers. We played this game when it was.
We are old millennial whippersnappers. We're on the front end of the millennial movement.
Sure. So we owned this game as children. This is us returning to it. And as the title of our podcast suggests, Game Life Balance, we'll talk about where it fits in adult life, where it fits in kid life, how it's aged. Has it aged well? Has it aged like a fine wine? Or has it aged like whiskey? I guess whiskey, it either loses alcohol content or it loses flavor.
It gains barrels. No, it gains barrels.
Is that what happens?
The more barrels that it has, the better the whiskey.
What if it does a barrel roll? What if that happens?
Generally, it then has to try a somersault.
Okay. What if it uses the boost to get through?
Fox, that was one of ours.
Andros's enemy is my enemy.
So one of the things I can't go on. So one of the things that I was thinking about before we even start talking about Super Metroid is, you know, this genre of game, which is now colloquially known as Metroidvania, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a decoupage. A decoupage.
Or a decoupage. Portmanteau of a decoupage. Take your pick.
Of Metroid and Castlevania. There are a lot of games in this style, and it's really crazy to think that before Super Metroid, this style of game kind of didn't exist, right?
Yeah.
Like you can go on Steam. You can go on Steam, and this is just obviously a complete guess, but I would guess that there's probably over 200, maybe 300 Metroidvania games that you could probably download of a variety of qualities. And that's just on Steam and not including any of the other consoles that came after Super Metroid and Castlevania Symphony of the Night were created. Right?
There are 199 on Steam.
I was that's impressive. I honestly didn't look that up. I was pretty close with my first guess. That's a lot of games. And that is just on the PC platform, right? That doesn't include any of the other games on any other platforms. So it's a genre that once it was created, once Nintendo kind of unleashed that Pandora's box after this game, they couldn't put it back. It really created a completely new form of video game when they made it. So, so listener, you need to keep that in mind. You need to keep that particular aspect of this game in mind, because the historical context of this game, I don't think can be understated or can be overstated. It is arguably one of the most important games that came out of that era of video games.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. It was released, for a little background, it was released for the Super Nintendo in 1994. It was the third game in the Metroid series. There was Metroid on the Nintendo Entertainment System, which was a Did you grow up playing that at all?
Interesting story about the original Metroid. I did not play it. My parents played it, and they never played video games. But I watched my parents play through Metroid, and I was very upset after they beat Mother Brain and could not escape from the vertical tunnel. I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and I don't remember this, but I remember my mom telling me this, that I sat there crying because the world exploded while they were trying to escape after beating Mother Brain. That was
Wow.
my experience with the original Metroid. And my parents did not play video games at all.
That is incredible.
Yeah, super weird.
Yeah, well, I didn't play it much. It was extremely hard, especially for kids. I mean, just no map. You ran around. I mean, Metroid was the original Metroidvania game,
Yeah.
but it wasn't as good.
It didn't iterate on it. It wasn't the full package at all. Like there were things that just they couldn't put in it because of limitations of the system. They couldn't include a map system.
Yeah,
There wasn't that capability.
It didn't work. So there's Metroid and there's Metroid 2 Return of Samus on the Game Boy. And then Super Metroid was almost canceled 3 times. It really didn't, it practically didn't see the light of day. Nintendo just was like, this isn't going to sell well. It's not going to be great. And boy, it did real good. Sold a lot of copies, critical acclaim. My question, we've been like focusing on kind of, I think, thesis questions on this podcast.
Yep.
And my question, and I'll let you talk about it because you have notes and you have lots of specific things to say, but I want to umbrella the conversation with the question, is Super Metroid a perfect video game? And I think it is.
Yeah, and my answer is almost. Almost.
Almost in the sense that it's almost a perfect game, or almost in the sense that there's no such thing as a perfect game, but this is as close as it can come.
I haven't thought about what I would consider a perfect game to be.
Like, do you know of any perfect video games off the top of your head?
Dark Souls comes to mind.
Really?
As a game that could be considered a perfect video game. Yeah, that's crazy, but that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Interesting.
Maybe Link to the Past. It's another one that comes to my mind.
Yeah, I think there's maybe a handful from this era, but I just playing through this game, I think it is absolutely the perfect game.
Yeah.
And the strange thing about it is that I was reading up on some of the development of this game. There's 6 kind of main areas that you go around: Brinstar, Norfair, Toria, and Meridia, other ones.
I don't even remember Toria. There's the pirate ship, and then there's I don't remember.
Torian is Mother Brain's area. It's like 3 screens.
It's 3 screens, yeah. And then there's the pirate ship and
Crateria.
Sure.
Brinstar, Norfair, Meridia, the ship, and Toria. Anyway, there's a few areas.
Right.
Supposedly, during development, the developers had created each of these areas pretty much on their own, and then basically kind of scotch taped them together. And it wasn't until a month before the game was released that they finalized the way that those different areas actually interconnect with one another, which is insane to me.
It is. But then if you step back and think about it, there are very clear delineations between the areas. They generally do not flow into one another.
Oh, sure.
I think there's only 2 or 3 kind of shortcuts that you unlock that are a smooth transition, that are not like a hard break to an elevator or a room with like a completely different texture set that you then move into through like a hallway and then you're in like the new area. So I think that actually makes a lot of sense when you step back and think about the way that the game is structured.
It could be. But yeah, I enjoyed this thoroughly, significantly more than any other SNES Classic experience I think we've had. And I could literally go in my living room and replay the whole thing right now. It just holds up.
Yeah, we can get into it. So I think the first thing about this game that is the most important thing to me, and it's the thing that I think of when I think of Metroid games, is the sense of isolation in Metroid games. In the best Metroid games, and I did not play other M, but by all accounts, it was not a good Metroid game.
It was all right.
When I think of Metroid games, though, specifically this one and Metroid Prime, it really feels like Samus is just dropped in a place, and it really feels like she is completely on her own. And there's a sense of there's always a sense of I have to do this completely by myself. Like there is no buddy that is going to come here and rescue me. There's no assist button to call on anything. I mean, it is all Samus doing it all for herself. And that is conveyed through the visuals of Metroid games. Everything is generally pretty dark and bleak. Through the music, most Metroid games have a pretty dark, slightly maybe electronica style soundtrack,
Yeah.
and like all of those kind of feed towards that idea of isolation. That I think that's what Metroid is completely about, right? And I love that. I love that because they do that without any type of exposition. You get 2 screens of exposition at the start of this game of text, 2 of them, and that's it. And then there is no more text other than the text of what an upgrade is when you pick it up for the rest of the game. There's no picking up logs. There's no dialogue with anybody. Everything is just kind of experiential storytelling,
Mm-hmm.
and it's wonderful. And it's done really well.
So well done. I mean, you are able. So many of the little screen. There's so many moments in this game that just tell a story. Almost every room in this game tells a story. Whether you're running across a bridge that's collapsing, or little creatures are showing you how to move. I mean, there are the little creatures, but they're certainly not.
No, and I'll talk about them actually because
All right.
they're an important part. They're an important part of another way. In fact, what I just said kind of feeds into those little creatures, right? So over the course of the game, Samus, you'll find yourself in an area where it'll feel impassable. This happens just a couple of times in the game. There's 2 that come to mind immediately. The first is when you learn how to Shine Spark. So there's an ability in the game called Shine Sparking, which you use your super running ability. You crouch down and then you jump up and you fly to the top of the screen of whatever screen that you are in as far as you can go until you hit the ceiling.
I like to say you harness all of your kinetic energy and then release it in a controlled movement in a
Vertical
direction.
Sure.
Or horizontal.
So the way that you discover this, and I to be honest, I didn't even remember you could do this until I fell down and discovered this again. But you fall into a pit on accident, and the pit is very long, and you have no idea how you're going to get back up this pit. So you go a couple screens over to the left, and there's a creature there that is indigenous to the planet, and it's just kind of running around in the background. You can't interact with it at all, but you watch it run, and it gets shadows behind it just like you do when you're running really fast. And then you see it duck down and start to shine a little bit, and then it jumps up in the air and goes flying super high. And that's all they show you. They just show you that with again, a creature that is just part of the planet. And you say to yourself immediately, oh, that creature was running really fast, ducked down, and then jumped up really high. I bet I can do that. And so you go over into the room where you need to jump that far vertically, and you do exactly what it shows. And it doesn't give you any instruction, doesn't give you any controls, nothing. You just run, you duck, you start shining, and you jump, and suddenly you are free. You jump up the entire pit and are at the top of the area. And it's beautiful, right? They don't have to tell you anything. They just show you with a creature. Another moment happens when you learn how to wall jump, or where they try to teach you how to wall jump. Wall jumping in this game is my one little quibble about the game. But they teach you how to wall jump, and again, you fall down a pit, and you're in an area where you can't gather enough speed to do a Shine Spark. What shows up? It's like a raccoon creature or something, and you see it jumping from wall to wall over a pit. You're like, what the heck is it doing? And so you jump up, and you're like, oh, I wonder if I can do this. And I don't know, you have to mess around with the controls a little bit. And then, yeah, like you say, oh, I can wall jump too. And then you say, oh, if I can wall jump here, where else can I wall jump, right? Or if I can shine spark here, where else can I shine spark? And like, what else can I discover when I do that? And that happens all over in this game, all over the place. So the big point for that for me is it is a show don't tell game. It tells you nothing. It never has to tell you anything. It never has to use exposition. It never has to use like text as exposition for anything. It is all based on what it shows you in the game and your own sense of self-exploration.
Yeah, completely. And once you discover stuff, you realize you can go through the game again. I mean, the replayability is just ridiculous. The replayability, because I got 81% of the items in the game. What were you at?
64% when I finished.
Oh wow, you just blew through it, didn't you?
I didn't just blow through it. I didn't remember the game. I didn't remember the game nearly as well as you, because I did watch you.
This was so weird.
I did watch you stream some of it, and there were plenty of power-ups that you just immediately got to that I never even found because I didn't know they were there. But I didn't remember the game. It would have taken a lot more exploration for me to find more stuff.
Yeah. No, and I thought that was weird too. I mean, because yeah, you watched it, and again, I streamed the first hour or so of gameplay, if not more, of all of the SNES Classic games on our Twitch channel at Game Life Balance. And yeah, you saw it. It was just like, oh yeah, there's a missile tank in that wall. Like I don't know why I remembered that stuff either, because I know I borrowed the game from you when we were little. So I only beat it a few times. You owned it, but I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I don't think when I was younger I had as much of an affinity for it as I did when I grew a little older. And I just hadn't played it as many times.
Or you weren't as bored.
That could be too. They do a lot of points of no return in this game that I really appreciate. I really like that design. So I already just set a couple of them where you have to learn how to use one of these abilities to then get out of that situation. But there's way more frequently used enter a room and something happens and you may unlock this giant area of maybe 20 screens that'll lead you to one upgrade, but you'll enter like a room and you'll turn around and realize I can't go back. Like something is barring my path from going back, whether it be like a grapple point where you need the grapple beam, whether it be a door that requires like the plasma beam when you go into that plasma beam room, whether the door shuts and it's a power bomb door, and I don't have the power bombs. I need to find them somewhere now, or I can't go back. I love that. Because there's like a feeling of desperation and dread when you enter there and say, oh, I don't know where like the next save point is. I can't go back for that. So that's another thing that gets used frequently, and I think to great effect in this game.
Yeah, the game conveys emotion using 16-bit graphics in a way that is just so ridiculously far ahead of its time. I mean, when you run into the big Metroid near the end, you're first entering rooms where giant creatures are turned into sand. So you get the sense of foreboding, and there's mystery kind of everywhere.
Yeah, sure.
There's always just a little thing and a little piece of foreshadowing. Maybe it's when Phanto appears, there's a bunch of blue flame before he pops up.
Even just the moment when you go into the crashed space pirate ship and nothing is working. All the doors are closed. And you can't open them. There's no power to anything. The save point that you find isn't working because it's not powered.
Yes.
Like that stuff is like, what is going on here? This is completely different than like anything else. And I'll talk about that in a minute too. So yeah, it just like it's environmental storytelling, which is something that gets talked about in video games all the time now, but it wasn't a thing. And so that's the thing that you have to remember, is that it is a commonly used method to create games now. It wasn't before. So this is one of the first games that did it, and it did it so well, right? It wrote the book on it. So again, the historical importance of this game to the rest of video games that came after it is huge.
Yeah. Now, and other things that many things were in no games before that. The mini map. How many games had a mini map?
They probably existed, but this was pretty darn functional one. I mean, it was pretty good for its time.
Yeah, very good for its time. I mean, maybe in Mario Kart or something, if even, but yeah, mini maps weren't really a thing. I mean, just the ability to scroll around the map, and it's a pretty useful map, but it's not modern day useful where it shows every doorway in between rooms. It just shows you the rooms, but you don't actually know where the access points to those rooms are, which I think is a strength and a weakness to the game because it's so well balanced that way. You know, if you've got a map that shows you every access point, like in a lot of modern games,
you kind of know right where to go when you get upgrades.
Yeah, exactly. So this way you've got a map so that it's not like the original Metroid where you're just like, this is a giant world. You don't have to draw on graph paper to see where you're going. It does that step for you, but you still do have to rely on your memory a little bit, which is why I think it's like the perfect balance of difficulty, because it doesn't give you everything at any point in the game, but it gives you just enough to kind of keep you going. And it rewards you when you've got a really good memory or you're paying really good attention to something, or you know what to go back to.
I think you may be overselling the map. I think it still had many weaknesses in this game still. Maps since then have done better jobs. I think what you would like the most, and I think what is probably the best example of an in-game map is actually the Etrian Odyssey series for the DS, because it auto maps for you while you're exploring somewhere, but you annotate the map yourself with a variety of symbols, whatever symbols you want. It gives you a huge suite of symbols to use, but you can annotate those. And there's a lot of information on this map where if I could just make a note of it somewhere, it would be far more functional. I don't need to annotate every door. I don't need to say this is a blue door, this is a red door, but it would be really nice to say, hey, this hallway over here, this was the hallway that you needed the grapple beam for. This is the hallway that you needed the speed boost for. You know, like just be able to put like a symbol or something on the map for that if even if I just was the one with control over that. Now that there was no way to make that work at this point of time, I'm sure. There was no way to program that to make that work when this game was made.
But I would argue the game has aged exceptionally well, because that would make it too easy, right? And I don't think that the inability to annotate it, like, I mean, really, like if I could just like make a little mark that says, oh yeah, grapple beam here, oh yeah, speed boost here, then I'm not going to need to remember anything. And yeah, there's a bit of a reliance on memory, but that rewards that provides replayability. If I go back, I know that if I go back and start to play the game now or tomorrow or over the weekend, I'll remember a bunch of stuff, so it'll be easier, but there'll still be a couple things where I'm like, ah, crap, like, what do I do here? What do I do here? So it rewards repetition. I don't know. I love the way that I think that there is difficulty within the functionality limitations of the game that holds up. And I think it's okay where there's something missing. It creates something else that works. And that's why I just think it's like the perfect game. It's like for any flaw you find, there's something really good about the game. Maybe they couldn't do voice acting in the game because of the technology at the time. Well, you're going to feel a lot more isolated if there are no voices. You know what I'm saying? So I get what you're saying, but I asterisk it.
Yeah, no, I understand. And we can agree to disagree on that. Like
Shut up.
I just think that the map, I'm not going to shut up. I got a lot to say. I'm just like, I'm not going to concede that the map is great, because I just don't think it is. But I think it was the best map that was available in a game up to that point.
It's pink, and pink is the color of girls, and Samus is a girl, so hashtag feminism.
Ergo. Right, yeah. Sure. We need to at least mention the music, because I mean, like, and actually have a conversation about it.
Oh,
there's what, 8 tracks in the game, basically, maybe like 10. So you basically have a track for each of the areas that you can go to, and then there's like a boss music track, and then I think there was probably a Mother Brain track that I don't really remember, and then like an escaping track at the end of the game. So there's there's not a ton of tracks in the game, but what is there is phenomenal. It is very, very good, and it's ambient in a way, because there are some of these areas that you're in for a very long time. You are in Meridia for a long time when you go there, and it doesn't ever feel old. It never felt old. The music never felt like it got in the way of anything, and it was always very fitting. And I would listen to the music from this game on its own easily.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's at least worth mentioning that the soundtrack is great.
Yeah, I have nothing to add to that. The lead composer was Kenji Yamamoto and did a lot of games from the time. Also did later Metroid games. That's all I got.
Yeah, perfect. So, and then the last point that I have, and we spent a bit of time on this, is I really like in this game how each of the areas feels so distinctly different in terms of obviously the visual style, right? But also kind of the themes in each area of what you're going to be doing. So I'll give you an example. Brinstar has a lot of pits with spikes, a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's a thorny plant-like area. It's very green. It's kind of like mossy looking, but you know you're going to be getting into a lot of like platforming jumping in it, right? Because that's the theme of Brinstar. You get to Norfair, and Norfair has some really strong enemies that you have to kill. There's a little less platforming. There's a lot of kind of timed stuff that happens in Norfair when it comes to like lava moving around and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Especially in lower Norfair, because it's kind of split into upper and lower Norfair.
Right, once you reach where Ridley's at. Meridia feels like a completely different game when you get there. Up to this point, you've been like finding secrets every once in a while here or there. Meridia is all bombing fake walls. It's everywhere in Meridia because that's where you really start to utilize your power bombs. I think that's what I'm thinking is the reason why. And so even to progress in Meridia, you have to find multiple secret passages all over the place, which was never the case anywhere else in the game. So Meridia felt like a completely different game to me. And the connection of the areas in Meridia feels like a maze. It felt so maze-like compared to any other part of the game to me.
It plays more like a puzzle platformer.
Yeah, for sure. So that was totally different. You get to the ruined space pirate ship, and it's like you're in like a horror game, right? Because there's like robots running around that like animate after the power comes on. You fight a ghost. You fight Fanto, who's a very difficult fight. And you haven't saved for 20 minutes getting up to him. I died the first time I played. I fought against Fantor.
Fanto, yeah, something. He's tough though. You're right.
Yeah, I died the first time. I lost 20 minutes of progress. I'm like, man, they don't do this in games anymore. This kind of sucks. But I took that in stride, obviously, and went back and played. But that's like there's like these weird plasma things that are like drifting through the walls to kill you in the space pirate ship. So each area was so different and felt they were just super cool to explore for a variety of reasons, and I loved that.
Yeah, and I would say that Lower Norfair also did the whole secret thing. I mean, I think you powerbomb a lot, but similar to Meridia, I felt in Norfair, everything was, I mean, you couldn't go anywhere. Literally every room was some kind of fake wall or some kind of power bomb. So I felt that way about Meridia as well, but less in a puzzle aspect, more in a just which explosion do I need to get through this wall?
Yeah, and you've acquired the screw attack at that point too. So that's also just tearing through anything that has the ability to be broken as well. So
yeah, you feel really powerful, which is nice because then they balance that with not a tough boss fight because Ridley's not tough.
Ridley wasn't hard at all.
But you do have to pump him full of everything you've got, really.
Yeah, I mean, at that the harder bosses were earlier in the game. Fantor being probably the hardest for me in the game. The rest was pretty easy for the most part. A last thing I'll say that I have to say and talk about is something that I had problems with in the game. And if there's anything that keeps the game from being the perfect game to me, it's the controls of the game. The controls were way stiffer than I remember. And there were many times where Samus didn't do the thing that I wanted her to do. And platforming controls, and the frustrating part was I was thinking about it, and platforming controls, they had already been perfected up to this point. You had Mario that moved a very specific way. You had Mega Man that moved a very specific way. Like it had been done already. So I didn't really understand why there were times where I would jump, and sometimes I would do a spinning jump that I would need to do a wall jump, and sometimes I'd just jump straight up, and I'd need to go back down and jump again. Like there were times where that happened. There were times where I would try to jump with the screw attack, or with the screw jump,
the space jump is what they call the infinite jump.
So there were times where I would try to jump with the infinite jump, and I would just fall. I would just fall in the room, and the infinite jump would just stop working. Right. So there were times where like Samus wouldn't turn correctly, like wouldn't turn fast enough or in a way that I had intended her to in the game, and so I would get hit by something. I don't think it ever caused any deaths or anything. I don't think it caused ever a loss of progress, but there was a good amount of time wasted in some of the rooms, or wall jumping. If there are areas where you have to wall jump, if you're going to make a game where you have to wall jump, and again, this is an older game, and it has since been perfected since then. But you had Mega Man X, right? Mega Man X to me is the gold standard for a wall jump. You kind of slide down the wall. If you stay just sliding down the wall, you're eventually going to fall to the bottom. So you have to actually do something, but you have as much time as you want to jump from wall to wall. Whereas it doesn't have to be like a specific set of pixels that you do your jump on. In a specific way, if you don't hit exactly back on your wall jump in this game, if you hit like slightly back and down or slightly back and up, your wall jump will not go off. And so there were plenty of times where I would be doing like a wall jump, and I got better at it, like you normally do in games. I got better at it as the game went on. But there were plenty of times where I was doing wall jumps and I would fall down for what felt like not my fault in terms of execution. It just felt like it was a too finicky of an ability to use.
I'll concede that.
Yeah, if there was anything I had a problem with, it was the controls of the game.
The jumping is odd, I will say, and there were times when I would agree with you. I think there is a sweet spot. I think it's consistent and not buggy, but the consistency is odd. It's almost frame perfect is I think the problem.
Yeah, I think that every time that I jumped vertically when I meant to do a spinning jump, I'm sure it's because I hit the jump button like a millisecond before I started hitting the control pad forward or something. But it ended up making it a less enjoyable experience because of that.
Yeah, the controls are too nuanced.
Maybe. Yeah.
It's like there's 18 different variations on how to do the screw attack and not like 2. Like if I push forward and jump, I should be doing this. And
by the end of the game, I never understood why there were times where I was using the space jump to get through a large room and I just fell to the bottom of the floor. I never understood why that happened. I couldn't like replicate it consistently, and I couldn't figure out how to fix it. So it just ended up me getting over the game and being like, well, that was just like a thing that I had to deal with. And sometimes I had to go back to the start of a room and start over again. So, but it's a problem. And kind of a minor problem, but I think it's a legitimate problem with the game. I do. And I think it makes it less easy to play. So I would just say if there was anything that would cause this game not to be like a perfect game for me, it would be that.
Yeah, that makes sense. That said, I cannot think of a game that is it's just perfect. It's just, I mean, even with okay, like anything's gonna have a slight flaw or maybe something you don't like or whatever. Controls notwithstanding, there was never a point where I was like, oh, I have to jump a second time. Like it never affected me on that level. Like when I think about it, when you say that, I'm like, yeah, there were a ton of times when I would jump and it didn't go the right way, but I just jump again. Yeah. And so to me, it was like really so minor that I mean, the game came out 24 years ago. That's a really long time.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the games that we've been playing came out that long ago.
Yeah, but for it to hold up this well, like if this were available on Steam and I bought it on Steam and I played through it, I would be like, wow. I'd be like blown away.
Yeah, I said that Yoshi's Island might be the best game that we play on the SNES Classic. And I think I still might stick by that. I think in terms of a platformer, it's a better platformer. But Super Metroid was a more important game for sure. Um, and I don't think you can really deny that. Super Metroid had far more of a lasting impact on video games to come after it than Yoshi's Island did.
For sure. I would agree with that as well. I think that, as you said in our last episode when we talked about it, the controls are insanely tight in Yoshi's Island and it offers a lot. But it's kind of apples and oranges too. I mean, you can't say one's better than the other, I don't think.
Right, yeah, and that's definitely not what I'm saying. The other thing that I really appreciate about this game, if you are at all interested in speedruns, there's a billion of them of this game. It could be the most speedrun game that's out there. I think that there's a possibility that it
might be. It kind of kicked off. It was one of the first really constantly speedrun games as well. And the interesting thing to me is like, I thought about this while I was playing because I'm like, maybe other games you think, well, I can beat this faster because it's a low bar, or I know how to optimize this route or whatever. But even just beating Super Metroid at my own pace, I just wanted to replay it again faster. It like naturally lent itself to, oh, now that I know this, oh, I wish I had known that. Oh, I want to go back and do it more efficiently. There's this weird kind of obsessive compulsive impulse that I have to just optimize it. And that's what speedrunning is, right?
And I actually wasn't interested in really talking about the speedrun of it. I just wanted to bring that up to talk about one of the cool things about this game that they never tell you. Like they never explain it to you anywhere in the game, but you can break the hell out of this game in terms of the sequence of events. And you do it basically strictly through wall jumping. But wall jumping opens up with some of the places that you can use wall jumps, opens up places that you can then access before you ever have any business of accessing them. And it can really create a completely different path through the game. And I would never have known about them except for watching speedrunning. But it's worth taking a look at, because if you ever want to just try this game in a different way, when you get somewhere, first of all, perfect the wall jump as best as you can. And then when you get to somewhere where you find a place that you feel like you shouldn't be able to get to yet, try wall jumping up there, because there's a good chance that you can make it there. And if you can make it there, you can possibly do the game out of order. And it seems like it might be kind of a fun way to try the game.
I did consider that for the speedrun, but decided not to. I also want to make a quick comparison between this and Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which is my favorite. Well, God, we've got a Let's Play of me from a VHS tape that I made from like the late 90s playing that game. I was like pretty much obsessed with that game. And you want to talk about broken games? Oh my God, that game is horribly broken. Sure. Pretty much the same way. And I think Super Metroid is better balanced, honestly. Like it's better than Symphony of the Night, which is one of my favorite games.
Yeah, Symphony did so much more. It's tough to compare the two, but I think it's definitely enough to say Super Metroid is a great game, one of the best games that's on the SNES Classic for sure, and totally still holds up, totally still worth playing. And just to reiterate one more time, what Super Metroid, what it caused in what came after it in this particular genre of game is all it can owe itself to is Super Metroid. Like this is the game that kicked off 1,000 Metroidvanias. And there are many that are very good, and there are many, I'm sure, that are not very good. But it's crazy that Super Metroid still holds up as well as it does as one of these games.
Yeah. Next, I want to try one of the ROM hacks. There's a bunch of ROM
I'm
hacks,
sure there are. I'm sure
and
there are.
some have mastered the physics of the game as well. So maybe you would enjoy one of those.
Weird thing. Weird thing. I think Metroid games don't sell very well, actually.
No, generally they don't.
Yeah, which is super weird because I've always thought that I had kind of like a mainstream taste in games in terms of the games that I've liked. But Metroid is like it's legitimately one of my favorite series. It really is. And it just surprises me that it doesn't sell that well.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm very
Because
sad
the
about it.
games are so well made. They really are. And Metroid Prime was something.
Metroid Prime is one of your favorite games
Yeah,
ever,
it was something, yeah. It
and it's
was
like Super Metroid if it were 3D.
Yep. Yeah, it really is.
Like, but a really, I mean, like exactly that.
Yeah.
But yeah, totally, yeah, very good. I agree with you. I think it's one of the best games ever made. And I think it's going to be I think it's going to hold up, and people will play it for decades to come. But I do think that it's just one of the best games, top to bottom, cinematic elements, atmospheric elements, gameplay elements, jumping notwithstanding, replay elements, all of it. It's just like it's the perfect package for me. So that said, I have trivia.
Yeah, that moment at the end where you get the hyper beam after the Metroid, man, that is such an incredible, and you just destroy Mother Brain with it. It is just so badass.
And that's a complaint I could have, is that the ending is not hard enough,
No,
because
it's not challenging at all.
difficult boss battles are a hallmark of a lot of Super Nintendo era games, and after that, even today. I mean, forever it's been a thing. But once you do hit Torian, it's all storytelling. I mean, those Metroids fly at you, and they are terrifying.
Sure.
The way they're animated, the way they're pulsating, their speed, their acceleration, like you don't want it. Like one of the Metroids actually got to me before I froze it, and I kind of freaked out a little bit.
And if you paid attention to the story, there aren't supposed to be any more Metroids, right? The last Metroid was there on the planet and was kidnapped. So it was also like, where did these Metroids come from as
Exactly.
well?
Exactly. But then, like you said, and then the Mother Brain chamber is difficult. But as you said, once you get that hyper beam, it's like it's so well done. It doesn't matter that the end boss is kind of a bit of a pushover, because you're so invested, and it's just so good. Like you look at it and you're like, I don't even care what is happening. It's just so good.
I also read an article on this, and it said one of the interesting things about it, like if you step back and think about it, the first thing you see when you turn on the game is a a dead body covered in blood, and then that Metroid cell broken open with nothing inside of it. So that's what's in the lab when it does that slow pan across the lab. And it's like, this is a game that was published by Nintendo. Nintendo wasn't into blood. I mean, this was not a Nintendo thing. I mean, this was a weird game for Nintendo to publish. It really was. It was so outside of anything all of their other colorful stuff that they generally did. I mean, Yoshi's Island was a year later, also published by Nintendo in '95, and the game is literally a pastel palette of colors. We talked about that on that episode.
And I found some fun trivia in this. This isn't one of the questions, but in early development of Super Metroid, they had to redraw a bunch of the characters because the original monsters and enemies that you fought were too cute, and players didn't want to kill them.
Oh, that's adorable.
So Nintendo had to make them more ugly so that you would shoot them.
I mean, Kraid's pretty ugly.
Did you save the animals?
Of course I did.
I did too.
Yeah, of course I did.
But during speedruns, hell no.
No, during speedruns, no, but I'm not a monster.
Yeah. If you don't get that, go watch Awesome Games Done Quick, like we talk about every year. All right. And watch the Metroid speedrun races. They're phenomenal. My favorite thing is that there'll be 4 players split screen, and they'll be within seconds. A screen of each other 40 minutes into the speedrun. They're so consistent. It's outrageous. So yeah, search for AGTQ or SGTQ Super Metroid speedruns. I'll try and link to a couple in the show notes if you want to check those. So I have 4 trivia questions for you. Are you ready?
I am excited.
So it's kind of a softball-ish. What popular video game series features a cameo by Crocomeyer's skull in one of their Game Boy Advance titles? It's a popular video game series. You don't have to name the game.
I've seen that skull. Cameo by Crocodile Skull. In Game Boy Advance?
Yep.
I don't know. I'm gonna say Pokemon.
That doesn't make any sense.
No, they're both published by Nintendo.
Yeah, okay. I'll give you a hint. It's not published by Nintendo.
Castlevania.
Yes. It was in Castlevania Harmony of Dissonance. There's like a bone room, and yeah, you climb on Crocodile's skull.
That's kind of cool.
Homage to the franchise, I'm sure. All right. And I will say that none of the Metroid games after Super Metroid have done as good of a job with the atmosphere. None of the 2D, like the Metroid Fusion games, like they don't.
They're good. They are good.
They're like tutorial walkthroughs.
For me, right, Metroid Fusion had way too much talking with the computer and the computer in it. Like, it was so not what I was looking for with the Metroid game. It was a good game, though.
Yeah, no, Metroid Prime is the best experience. Speaking of that, the Metroid franchise saw a pretty long drought after Super Metroid was released. It was originally intended to be the final game in the series. How many years was it before another game in the Metroid series was released?
I think it was 6.
8.
It was 8. So it's 2002 was Metroid Fusion?
Because
Metroid Fusion and Metroid Prime released on the same day. That was the big, like, crazy thing that they did.
Yeah, it was. And also, by the way, I found this little tidbit. During the series hiatus, fans eagerly awaited a Metroid game for the Nintendo 64. Sakamoto considered creating an N64 title, but wasn't interested in being part of its development, mainly because he didn't understand the console's controller.
It was a bad controller.
Which I thought you would like, because you always say it's a bad controller.
It's a bad controller.
Yeah. So yeah, Metroid Fusion. I do remember that Metroid Fusion and Prime came out the same day or whatever. Okay, where do my notes go? Here we go. Although the Metroid series is based on Alien, and the character of Samus Aran was inspired by that movie's hero, played by Sigourney Weaver, Samus's human look was based on a different actress. Do you know which actress it was? And I can give you a hint if you need one.
Blonde-haired chick with a ponytail. From the 90s.
It would be from the 80s.
Who was the chick that played Sarah Connor in Terminator 2?
Not Sarah Connor. I'll give you a hint. It was based on this actress's look at the time when she starred in 9.5 Weeks and My Stepmother is an Alien.
I don't know enough 80s pop culture, so you'll have to just give me the answer on this.
Kim Basinger.
Okay. Basinger?
Yeah,
Basically, that's a family. Yeah, okay.
Skip, then we'll just move on. All right, and finally, fans have given names to nearly every... So let me say that again so it sounds better. Fans have given names to nearly every room in Super Metroid.
Really?
In part to make it easier to discuss speedrun strategies.
Funny.
I came across this when I learned about the Noob Bridge.
There is no way that I'm going to get the answer to this question, but I'm excited to hear what the question is.
So which of the following is not a room name used by speedrunners?
Wait, before you ask this question, what is the Noob Bridge?
In Brinstar, very early in the game, there's a bridge with rocks that disappear when you run across it, and you have to dash with the A button to get across it. And they call it the Noob Bridge because newer players that never use the dash button don't realize that they need to dash across it. So they just... I remember when we were little, I remember when I borrowed this game from you, I legitimately could not figure out how to get across that bridge. So I was a noob in the Noob Bridge.
Okay, I got you. So which one is not a room name?
So which of the following is not a room name, according to the speedrunners? Is it A, Bat Cave, B, the worst room in the game?
That's got to be real.
C, Green Hill Zone, or D, Jamaican Me Crazy?
Jamaican Me Crazy. So the Bat Cave, there are plenty of bat-like creatures in the game. I feel like that's an actual one. The worst room in the game has got to be a real one. Has to be a real one. Gosh. Green Hill Zone with I'm gonna go with Jamaican Me Crazy.
You are correct.
Okay.
I made up Jamaican Me Crazy.
But I could totally hear. So which room is the worst room in the game?
The worst room in the game is a room in Lower Norfair. Maybe I'll even like
Link to it.
pull this up. I'll link to it, but it's a very vertical screen. Here, let me screen share for the YouTube people. We'll just share this. You see that there?
Okay.
Yeah, so that's it. I've got it.
I do remember that room.
Yeah, right. So I don't know if you start at the top or the bottom, but yeah, and I'll scroll down and yeah, I probably because it's a pain for speedrunners for some reason.
Must be, yeah.
Because I think you have to freeze things to get up it or whatever, but I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. That's what it is. So that's
Awesome.
The worst room in the game.
Awesome.
And that's our Super Metroid trivia. Well, I was super, 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 super pumped about that game. And soon we will unveil what game we are playing next week or next time. I think next time we're doing what are we doing?
The plan for next time is to do Earthbound. That was always the plan. But I don't know if you're going to be done with it by then. That's the danger that.
Oh yeah, no, we'll be done. I'll be done with it in a couple weeks, I think. So I was just checking Twitter to see who has tweeted suggestions at us. So we will be doing Earthbound in a couple of weeks. FYI, my wife is out of the country for the next 2 weeks, so I am solo bachelor pad guy. I get like this weird anxiety, like I get really anxious, and I hate playing single player video games for long periods of time when she's out of town. I just like feel really isolated. It's like really bad. So to fix that, I will be streaming a lot of Earthbound. I'll be streaming as much of the game as possible because I feel less lonely when I stream. It's like a weird just being home alone too much kind of thing. And I have friends. Jesus, I'm not depressed, but I'm just saying like for me it'll be more fun to stream anyway. So just keep an eye on the Twitch channel for Game Life Balance. It's just twitch.tv/Game Life Balance. And evenings for the next 2 weeks, I'll be streaming it a ton.
I am totally going to watch you.
Saying stupid things and yeah, just make dumb comments and whatever. So that'll be Earthbound.
I'm kind of excited to see your reactions to the first time you play that game.
Yeah, me too. So, I'll probably drink a lot of whiskey, even though that's not allowed on Twitch, but you won't know.
You won't know. It's brown water. It's kind of gross. It's raw water. You bought $25 raw water.
Exactly. Hold on. I'm grabbing a thing. And we'll do the life stuff segment, the kind of life part of the Game Life Balance podcast in a second. But before that, just so you know that I forgot to tweet to let people know to nominate games until this afternoon. So we only have 2 suggestions. Okay. 2 nominations this week. Do you know what they are?
I don't.
One is F-Zero.
Okay. I've never seen the credits of that game, so I don't know how that's going to go for me.
Dude, oh God. F-Zero, and the other is Street Fighter 2 Turbo.
Oh, sweet. Dude, I'm excited to play through that game again. I owned that game as a kid. I really liked it. I really liked it a lot. And I generally don't like fighting games at all, but just playing against the computer in that game, whatever, was fun. I had a lot of fun with that game.
Yeah, no, it's good. So, but yeah, we'll do that to wrap up the episode. But what have you been up to? What is your life?
You asked me about my hair before this episode started. And you're like,
yeah, you have like a lion's mane. It's crazier than mine.
What is in your hair? It's got a lot of hair. I've got a lot of hair right now. And I have a lot of hair because I'm going to be chopping it off next weekend. And I'm going to be chopping it off because at the start of about 2 months ago, my mother-in-law was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I was not growing my hair out at this time at all, but she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she started on chemo. They did the operation, to remove the breast cancer, and she just started on chemo. And we're gonna have a hair shaving party because one of the things about chemo is that it makes you lose your hair, right? So we are going to, as a family, like a large family, we're going to get together next weekend. And a bunch of us are going to shave our heads. And when we first sent out the invitations, I felt like it was kind of unfair because the only three people that like signed up initially were me, my brother-in-law Ben, who has relatively short hair as it is. I mean, he actually used to buzz his hair. He has a little more hair now, but not much. And Casey's grandpa, who is already bald. So I kind of felt like I was getting the raw end of the deal on this. But you know, there are going to be more people that do it as well. So it's for a good reason. I'm kind of excited to do it. And once we decided to do that, I was just like, well, I'm just going to let it go for as long as it is, as long as it can. So
yeah, that's
why it's long. You know, we've been dealing with that as a family, and that's a tough thing. And it's actually going well. Things are good with it. Nice. So that is good.
Good. I'm glad that, yeah, the
cancer sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks. It's a hell of a thing. It really sucks.
Ugh. Well, I mean, good for you for doing what you can.
Yeah. It's good. Keep people in good spirits, right? It's a big part of it.
Good causes are good. I kind of like the hair. I'm not going to lie. I don't usually like anything attached to your face, but, I mean, used to it.
It can grow back, right?
It can.
It's just hair.
Much like the hands of time. So are the sands.
What about you? So you are a bachelor for 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of video games and drinking whiskey. There was some Buffalo Trace on sale when I was in Rockford last weekend.
I assume that that's a whiskey that I don't know about.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Okay.
It's a bourbon.
Where'd your wife go?
Guy. She does an annual pilgrimage to a Spanish-speaking land to immerse herself because she teaches Spanish, and it's good to be immersed in Spanish if you're teaching it because it's a pretty good excuse to practice. So she's in Argentina right now, and she'll be back in a bit.
When she goes down there, does she like set up an itinerary for herself, or does she just say, "I'm going to go"? She's probably been down there for enough times where she just can be immersed in the culture and feel probably at ease, right?
Yeah, no, she usually goes places with archival work because she's a professor and she likes to write research papers and do archival work. So she'll pick cities based on where is there a great library where I can get a bunch of archival documents that I can't get anywhere else.
Right.
And so she knows the one there. She's been to Colombia before, stayed in Bogota, and went to Madrid one year. So usually she'll just kind of pop off to a place and kind of stick her head down and do that, but also, you know, do the coffee shop and culture thing and go out and meet people and stuff. So yeah, it's good for her. And it makes me feel less bad about leaving town for MartinCon and Gen Con. So it's like, oh, cool. You can leave for like most of a month. I get 2 weekends a year where I can just kind of pop off and bye.
And really, you're immersing yourself in a culture during those things as well. So it
certainly am.
It is a different culture than the culture in which we both live our normal lives. So yeah,
that is absolutely correct. Yeah,
and actually, you kind of speak a different language when you're there too.
That's
really, it's like this. Yeah, really, it's like the same thing.
Yeah, it is. I break my travel into two different tinier pilgrimages, and then she just is the one big one, which is more expensive than mine because mine are just at my friends' houses.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I saw Black Panther. We've discussed this at length on text messaging, so we shouldn't rehash it. But it was a Marvel movie, and we both enjoyed it. I think generally.
Yeah, I said that it was my favorite Marvel movie I've seen. Yeah, and I've seen quite a few of them.
And did you see Civil War?
That's like the one that I haven't seen.
Oh,
it's been in my Netflix queue for months, and I've just never sat down and watched it.
I mean, now you're not going to like it because it's going to be overhyped. But
no, I don't think so because Black Panther was hyped up pretty high.
Yeah, okay,
and I thought it lived up to the hype. So
yeah, you enjoyed some of the nuance in the storytelling, and to me, Civil War does an exceptional job of nuanced storytelling, where you're kind of like, okay, well, it's not just a cut and dry, light side, dark side, bad guy, good guy dichotomy. And it tackles some political issues.
There aren't good Marvel villains. Like there aren't Marvel villains with complex, like deeply written motives. So when one comes along with even just a little hint of one, like it gives me more respect for the movie or the story in which they're telling. That's how I feel about Marvel villains.
Yeah. Well, I found through our conversation with our friends over text that we all have very different criteria for good movies. So maybe you'll see the villain and you'll be like, this is dumb. I get it. It's predictable. Or maybe like me, you'll appreciate it, especially in the pantheon of Marvel films, for being a bit more nuanced.
Yeah.
So
I hope so.
That.
I maybe I'll watch that this weekend.
Yeah, and you're playing Final Fantasy V, right?
I'm by myself tomorrow night because I'm babysitting and Casey's away. Also, I'm not babysitting. I'm with Max and Casey is babysitting. So maybe I'll watch it tomorrow night when he's in bed.
Night.
Yeah, he'll be asleep.
Oh, that's fair. And you're playing Final Fantasy V right now.
I am. Holy crap. Final Fantasy V. So, okay.
You love that game too much.
For context, I've only played Final Fantasy V the past like 3 times that I've tried it in the 4-Job Fiesta, which is a fundraising event that happens over the summer that I play with our buddy Max. That's the only time I've played it, and there's very specific criteria to play that game in the 4-Job Fiesta. Out of the 20 job classes, there are 4 that you are given that you can use, and you can pay money to change them. But I've only ever played with 4 job classes these past couple of times that I've played. I've only played through that game just like generally in a normal playthrough a single time. And I remember really liking it. The 4-Job Fiesta can be slightly frustrating because if you don't get certain classes, it's very difficult.
Right.
But when playing through the game as just like your average game that I can do and play however I want, that game is so good. Final Fantasy V is the best first Final Fantasy game. I think that is where the series has its roots in
finds
terms
its voice.
Yep, I don't think that 4. I think 4. After playing it again, which I just did, it is still very shallow. And it doesn't have interesting gameplay mechanics.
No.
Everything at all. Like it is all completely scripted in a way, like it is the most linear story that you can tell, right? Final Fantasy V, the gameplay mechanics are still deep and fascinating with the way that job system works. So I think it is really where that series launched off to be a combination of both a really like fun, good, albeit pretty cheesy story, married with some sort of really interesting party building mechanics.
Well, you need to get caught up on your retrospective reviews.
I do. Oh, it's so good. It's really good. It's a really good game. Play Final Fantasy V is a really good game.
Yeah, and that's why after Earthbound, we're instead of voting for Secret of Mana or Final Fantasy VI, we're just gonna do Final Fantasy VI next, because then John can just keep in his order.
Yep, absolutely. And I mean, I'll probably start playing Final Fantasy VI pretty soon, but our review for that will be in like a month or 2. So it should still line up fine.
That one I may blaze through because
you've played through it a billion times, right?
Also, I may try to speed run it.
Oh, that would be super interesting.
Because I just played through Final Fantasy VI, a ROM hack. Remember what was it called?
You've got a review of that.
There's it's on our website. If you look on Game Life Balance, the GameLifeBalance.us for a Final Fantasy VI review, I reviewed a ROM hack that was really good, but it involved some grinding. So I basically feel like I kind of somewhat recently played through Final Fantasy VI, but in a really grindy way. So I might just try and speedrun it. I don't know.
And that's interesting. And actually, if you do that, we'll have a good set of perspectives, because my plan is to do a 100% run of that game, because I haven't done one in a very, very, very long time.
Oh man.
So, and there's so much in that game in the World of Ruin to do. So it's going to take me a while.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, we have to decide what game we're playing next week.
I should get a die. You need to stall.
No, I have a coin.
You've got a coin. Oh, wait, that's all we need.
There's only 2. Also, I've been playing Stellaris. Do you play Stellaris?
I don't.
Okay, I bought a copy for Rob for Christmas or something from Game Life Balance Australia.
It's a 4X game, right?
Yeah, I thought it was like Civilization in space, but different. But it's real time. But it's made by
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's made by people. It's made by the people that did Europa Universalis, right?
I don't know. But you
Yeah.
change the speeds of the game, but it's real time. But then you pause it basically anytime anything happens. There's a lot. It's the learning curve is stupid. Like it's absolutely. I got like probably 7 hours into a game. I don't know how to win the game. I don't know not just like how to achieve the objectives I need to achieve. I don't know what the winning conditions are. I don't know how to beat the game. I just like have been building a civilization kind of and then getting attacked by pirates that kill me a lot. Like I'm really bad at it.
Mhm.
So I hope that Rob is having a better time than me. Maybe we can do a joint review or something on a Game Life Balance Gaiden. I don't know what is going on, but like it's fun and the music is great and I like a lot about it, but I'm also kind of like I don't know what's going on. So I just gave up like halfway into a game. I'm going to return to it after watching some YouTube tutorial videos. But like, I try to imagine, I'm like, what if my first Civilization game was Civilization 6? Like, would it be this steep of a learning curve?
Yeah.
Because I've been playing Civ since Civ 2, right? So like, I've known the basic.
The answer to that question is no, because my first Civ was Civ 5.
And it wasn't that hard?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I also am a huge board gamer though, right? So I guess that translates so much into those types of games. That
I'm
maybe
enough of a board gamer though.
Yeah, you are. I would think that some of that would translate too. Must be a completely different kind of game.
It's different, but I like it anyway. So, all right. Well, I'm gonna point the camera towards my and here we go. This is great.
Okay, so wait. So cars have fire coming out of the backs. So tails.
Right. So we've this is a Hearthstone coin.
Okay.
So it's got the 1 on one side. Oops, that's upside down. So it's got the 1 on one side, and that will be for F-Zero since that was the first game nominated.
Okay.
And then the weird hexagonal umbrella thing will be Super Street Fighter 2 or Street Fighter 2 Turbo. And then I have to flip it like on the hold on. I gotta.
You're supposed to catch.
And then
you catch. No, you catch in your hand. You flip and you catch in your hand, and then you flip. How do you not know how to flip a coin?
I don't know. All right, hold on. I flip it, caught it,
and then you flip it on. Yeah, there you go.
And it is F-Zero.
It's F-Zero. So
damn it, Ryan Dombrowski. I may make him review it with us.
So the next game that we'll review is Earthbound, and then the following game after that will be F-Zero.
F-Zero, more like 0 out of 10 stars. Am I right?
Again, our goal on all of our SNES Classic games and reviews is to see credits. So we will do our best to see credits on F-Zero. Again, I've never done it, and I owned that game too, and I have never completed that game. So.
All right. Well, I apologize, listener. We went a little long. We got like stuff to wrap up. Gonna Geek Network. Hey, we're part of it at GonnaGeek.com. Game Life Balance Australia was just accepted in the Gonna Geek Network, so that tells you their standards. Anyway, on Better Podcasting,
they're really terrible.
On Better Podcasting, episode 121. It's called How to Guest on a Podcast. Hint, guest on Game Life Balance Australia. They are desperate for American voices. If you're considering being a guest on a podcast, this episode is for you. Hence why it's called How to Guest on a Podcast. Stephen and Stargate Pioneer run down some best practices to help you prepare for your appearance. Check out this and other podcast-related topics in this week's Better Podcasting. And on... what else? What are other shows? How about just one more fix? On just... no, I'm not supposed to read that. Let's do this. Gallifrey Public Radio. We all love Doctor Who. Episode 276, a classic rewatch of The Monster of Peladon. Our friend Alyssa of This Week in Time Travel joins the crew to rewatch the penultimate Third Doctor story, complete with mining revolts, ghostly agadors, and our favorite hermaphroditic cephalopod. Every word in that makes me want to listen to it.
Gosh,
Penultimate is a great word.
It is a great word. Cephalopod's a pretty good word.
Hermaphroditic cephalopod, I think.
That's a tongue twister if there ever was one.
Yeah, and yet I read it so.
You read it perfectly.
Thank you.
We're all impressed.
Yeah, so that's Gonna Geek Network. Check it out, GonnaGeek.com. We're a podcast on it, and WGN. But John will tell you that.
Yeah, I will. I would just like to say thank you for listening to the Game Life Balance US podcast, the American edition of the Game Life Balance podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this episode. Leave us a review if you really want to make our day. You can find us at the Gonna Geek Network at gonnageek.com or on wgnradio.com. Learn more about Game Life Balance, including contact information and links to our sister show in Australia at gamelifebalance.us.
And if you really want to make our day, go to the Dinosaur Museum in Australia. I have heard amazing things.
The best that I can do is to buy a sweatshirt from the Minnesota Field Museum with the purple sweatshirt that Dustin wears in Stranger Things from the Minnesota Field Museum.
I haven't watched Stranger Things.
You're dead to me.
Okay, that's fine. That's good. I was really hoping I could think of more jokes to make about our Australian friends, but I have nothing. I have nothing. I'm sorry, Rob.
You're going to say shrimp on the barbie, aren't you?
I'm not. This one time I'm not going to say it, but you know it's coming. You know it's coming, blokes and governors.